I got a suggestion recently, well just last week, to do a lesson on a melody that I played many years ago on the first CD I made called A Christmas Collection of really old traditional tune, goes back centuries. O Come Emmanuel. Now it's very hymn-like, which means that you don't need a lot of razzle-dazzle in it because you're probably going to have, and we are, going to have chord changes pretty much every 2 beats. Once in a while I'll have a chord for a whole measure, but not too often. And the melody moves along at a steady pace of quarter notes really regularly. So what we're going to do here is kind of make this a student participation lesson. Build your own song. There we go. Instead of building a guitar, we're going to have you build a song. And the first thing, what we're really just going to do is put together the melody and the chords, starting incrementally with just bass notes. So this could be a very simple arrangement. Could be done by just playing the melody and adding a bass note that is the root of whatever chord needs to be played at a time. So the first thing, phase 1, which I'll elaborate on a little bit more in the next segment, that I'd like you to start working on, is you can take a look at the sheet that I have that has just the melody and the chords on it. I'll play the melody here once, but I'm going to play it an octave lower because you might be able to piece this together by ear as well. So if you don't want to look at the page and you don't know the tune, it goes like this. We're in the key of E minor. So all of the notes are out of an E minor scale. E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E. I'm going to start the melody on the low E, or the middle E. Now when we play it with the bass notes, and later on we're going to add full chords, and later on than that, more later, we'll add a few filler notes, maybe a lot of filler notes, and we'll see how it goes. So phase 1 will just be to combine the bass and the melody. Well, phase 1A will be just learn the melody. The next phase will be add the bass notes. The next phase will be add the chords on the beat when the first note happens, but possibly the second. I'll elaborate on each of those as, well, after I play it. Here, first you got to know the melody. There we have the melody. It's a slightly unusual phrasing in that it's really 3 or 4 6-measure phrases. I guess 3 6-measure phrases. Is that right? Wait a minute. 1. 3-measure phrases. 4 3-measure phrases is the best way to think about it. And each phrase has basically 2 chords per measure. The chord progression, which I've got on the same chart, would go something like this. If I were to just strum the chords, we'd have this. Do, starting on E minor. Do, 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 do. Now, the chord progression could go lots of different ways. That's the way I chose to harmonize it many years ago, and just decided to stick with it. But there are other options that would work. Okay, so now to just play the bass notes, you can look at the chords. If I just play the root of each chord, we'd have this: E, G, A, D, E. I have a a couple more hints I want to give you about the chords before I go through exploring it, and that is we want to take advantage of two things. As many open strings as possible when we can on any of the chords. That would include particularly E minor and G. Two chords that have a lot of open notes in there, at least have the second and third strings open all the time, or can be open, the B and the G. So anytime you've got an E minor chord or a G chord, you don't need to make a bar like for the G, even if the melody is a G or a B or something like that. And then also we need to use the triad reduction approach to some chords, where when we need an A minor chord and the melody note is on the first string, A minor for example, A minor and D are the two main ones that are going to fall into this category. We can use an open A in the bass and an open D in the bass for those chords, and we only need three notes. We need the melody note, which in most cases will be on the first string, and then a note on the second and third string that would be part of the chord, either A minor or D. So we can get away, we don't need a full bar chord for anything in here, at least not an A minor or a D chord. We will have full bars occasionally for the B minors. But for A minors and Ds, think about three string reductions of chords you can play, meaning just the top three strings plus the open A in the bass if the chord's A minor, or an open D in the bass if it's D. So that's the main couple hints I wanted to give, and I want to bring up one other possibility, because in the last segment I mentioned when we have, like in the last measure of the first phrase, the E minor to D, possibly putting the D chord on beat 4. It also wouldn't sound bad to put the D chord on right when the D in the bass happens, but don't play a note on the first string. That would sound like something like this. I just gave away too much, but anyway, let's see what's going on here with this E minor. Grabbing the chord, and then hang on to that G, but just go to a D chord here on the second, third, and fourth strings, and grab those notes, and then reach up and get the A in the melody after that, so that measure would be E minor, and then we hear the G chord. Got to grab the right strings. And that principle could happen as well when we have the D chord going to G in the third measure of the third phrase, which would be measure 9, I guess. So every place a melody note is either tied to beat 3 or there's a rest on beat 3, you could play the chord, just don't play anything on the first string and just bring that melody in right there. So you could be consistent with having the chord happen on the beat that the chord change happens, either beat 1 or beat 3. I still don't like that idea for the B minors that have E happening on the third beat. It's better in those cases to bring the chord in on beat 4. Okay, enough hints.